Family Business is a 1989 film directed by Sidney Lumet, written by Vincent Patrick, and we have a brilliant cast, including Sean Connery, Dustin Hoffman, and Matthew Broderick. I really like Matthew Broderick, so I was looking forward to this, and absolutely, Matthew Broderick gave a great performance. Everybody gave a great performance, but unfortunately, I did not like this. And part of it is down to personal preference. It's not necessarily my kind of film, but with a cast like this, there was still a very strong chance that I was going to really enjoy this. And I just found it to be really boring, and I didn't really like any of the characters. It's about a grandfather, father, and son, and the family business is a life of crime. And Adam, Matthew Broderick's character, is asking his grandfather for help with, some unacceptable activities, put it that way, and he wants his father to be involved as well, but I'm not going to say any more about who actually gets involved, whether or not they carry out this crime, and ultimately what happens. As a concept, I think it could work well enough. I do like the idea, not in reality, of course, but within the context of the film, of 3 generations of criminals, and kind of how that family business, as you like, has been passed down from one to the next. And obviously there are similarities in their characters, but there are also some differences as well. And I do think the characters, this is going to sound contradictory, I think the characters were well written, but I think they were boring. They're well written in the sense that I do think they were believable. I think they had a lot of substance to them, but I just don't find the personalities to be very interesting. So I guess that one's maybe down to personal preference, because they're not badly written. I just didn't think they were that interesting. The narrative itself is fascinating, and I was really keen to find out what would happen. I think the problem for me is that it's just very, very slow. The film is 1 hour and 50, and I feel like at least 30 minutes of that could have been removed here and there, not really any specific scene. There might have been a few small scenes here and there that didn't add much, but it just felt so slow. And maybe if I'd found the characters to be more interesting, I wouldn't have minded that too much. And yes, I did enjoy the performances, I did enjoy watching these actors, but not because the characters were interesting, and not because the narrative was interesting either. That being said, I was keen to find out ultimately what would happen, and I guess that kept me going. So even though a lot of the action wasn't very action-packed, and not really that fascinating in terms of the characters themselves, again, there were times when it was interesting, but not for the majority of the film. But my desire to find out ultimately how things would end up was enough to keep me going. That, and as I said, I really like Matthew Broderick. So some pull factors, and I wasn't disappointed by the performances. The concept did sound interesting, and I guess it worked. It did work as a narrative. It just maybe wasn't as fascinating as I would have liked. Maybe if the pacing was better and we didn't have so many moments when at least I was feeling quite bored, that might have been a different story. And again, the characters are well written, but I didn't think they were that interesting for the most part. Do I recommend it? I'm going to say yes, if there's a reason that you want to watch this. For example, if there's somebody in the cast you like. It's certainly a watchable film, but it's very slow. The narrative's not as good as it could be. The characters are not that interesting. Again, there were a couple of moments when they were maybe a little interesting, but for the most part, they're not interesting enough to carry the film when the narrative is not that good. So it definitely needs work, but there was potential there, and it's not terrible. It isn't terrible, but not as good as it could be. But all of that being said, if there's any reason why this sounds like it might appeal to you, then I guess Family Business might be one that's worth watching.